Okay, here's the second thing, which is love the brotherhood of believers. And that sounds really weird, doesn't it? The brotherhood. It sounds like a title of a film or something like that. But all it means is just, look, love guys who already belong to the church. Not the building, but the people who belong to the church. And Peter describes them as the brotherhood. Also sisterhood. Women as well, girls as well. And in the gospel, the Lord Jesus Christ, we are a family. Christians are a family. So God is the Father. Jesus, imagine this, as an older brother. And each of us as spiritual brothers and sisters. And Peter just says, look, because that's what we are, if you're a Christian, then we are to love each other. Especially when life is hurting. Especially when there's loads of suffering going on. Making sacrifices for each other. Again and again in the Bible, in the New Testament, the writers encourage us to live for each other. So let me just give you some examples. Love one another, encourage one another, spur one another on towards love and good deeds, offer hospitality to one another, teach and admonish one another, greet one another, serve one another in love. Which basically is another way of saying you cannot be a Christian on your own. So if you are here tonight as a Christian, if you're not a Christian, it's worthwhile you listening to this, because this gives you an idea of what's involved in being a Christian. But if you're here tonight and you're not a Christian, and you are a Christian, then as you go into the autumn, we should be involved in the life of our church, or the YF, or SET, or whatever it is that the teenage group that we belong to is called. In our congregation here at St. Elizabeth's, we have an elderly lady called Helen. And Helen was really, really badly treated. She was very nearly killed quite a long time ago. It was out in Africa by by some really nasty guys. But the amazing thing was that as she went through incredibly tough times and some horrible, horrible suffering, and even to the point that somebody took a gun and they put the gun to Helen's head. Yet the amazing thing was that she remained a Christian. Now, why did she remain a Christian? Well, it brings us to our third point, which Gary's going to put up on the screen, which is because she feared God. Helen feared God more than she feared people. And because her trust was in God, and in His goodness, and in His control and power, spiritually speaking, she had absolutely nothing to fear if that guy who put the gun to her head and pulled that trigger. Because she knew that if he had pulled that trigger, she just would have gone straight into the presence of the Lord Jesus Christ to be with Him for eternity. And that's what it means to fear God. It's just simply to know that Jesus is Lord, and that He is King, if you like, that He is Emperor. That He's bigger and greater than death. I mean, all of us here are fairly young. Well, very young. But you will die. You will die. But Jesus is greater than death. And when it is that we do die, if we're at Jesus, we will be safe in Him. And that is why Christians fear God. It doesn't mean that you go wobbly at your knees. It means that you come into God's presence and you bow before Him. And one last thing, just to finish with, which is really weirdness. Honour the King. Or to put that in a slightly different way, show respect to those who are in positions of leadership. You see, for the Christians that Peter was writing to, life would have been very, very difficult indeed, because the Roman Emperor at that time, he was the symbol of everything that was put up against Christians. And Rome had probably already put Paul the Apostle, another really well-known Christian, to death. And the guy who was emperor at this time when Peter was writing, a guy called Nero, just burnt Christians. He just burnt them alive. And yet, Peter says, honour him. He says, pay him respect. He says, honour the king, the emperor. And here's the reason why. Because that emperor, that king, was put there in the first place by God. So God puts kings, rulers, however you want to describe them, in place to punish wrong and to reward what is right. But the thing is that there's just loads of rulers in our world who don't do that. And they're bad leaders. And when bad leaders tell us to do something that will mean that we have to disobey God, then basically we don't do it. If your parents, dare I say it, tell you to do something which means that you have to disobey God, then you don't do it. And yet we still honour them. We still recognise that they've been put there by God, and we still respect them. So the message for tonight is really simple. It's just live as servants of God. And to do that at school, to do that in your home, to do it with your friends, and also to do it with those who are not friends to you. Just keep on serving God. And we do that by showing proper respect to everyone, because that's the way that God treats us. We do it by loving the brotherhood of believers. If we can't love other Christians, then there's no hope of us loving other people. We do it by fearing God, because actually Jesus is King. And then we honour those who have been put in positions of leadership over us. All those kind of things are what is to do with serving God for you.